I buried my wife on a Tuesday. Cold morning, gray sky. The kind of day that makes the whole world feel like it's holding its breath with you. For days later, I sat in a lawyer's office and watched my daughter-in-law smile. Not a polite smile. A small, satisfied one, the kind you try on in private when something's gone exactly the way you planned it. I noticed because I'd spent 41 years married to a woman who could read a room without saying a word. Margaret used to say, "People show you who they are in half a second, Walter, and then spend the rest of their lives convincing you that you imagined it." I never forgot that. So when Vanessa, my son David's wife, smiled the moment our lawyer said the word estate, I didn't imagine it. I started watching. I had no idea I was about to spend the next 4 months becoming a detective inside my own family. No idea my daughter-in-law was already moving money. No idea my son would lie to my face without even knowing it was a lie. And no idea my wife, sick and dying, had spent her last good months quietly building a trap of her own, because she already knew exactly what Vanessa would do the second I was alone. But let me start where it actually started. My name is Walter Coleman, 68. I started Coleman Building Supply in a rented garage at 26, with $300 and a truck that didn't always turn over. Margaret did the books at our kitchen table with our son David asleep in a laundry basket beside her chair. By 50, we had 3 locations and 40 employees, a good, honest thing, the kind you hand to your children and say, "Take care of this, it took everything I had." David came to work for me after college. Smart, but soft in a way that worried me. Too eager to be liked. Too uncomfortable saying no. Our daughter Emily went the other direction. Became a nurse, married a quiet man named Tom. Never asked us for a dime. David met Vanessa at a wedding 9 years ago. Polished. The kind of woman who walks into a room already knowing where the money is standing. Her mother, Diane, was cut from the same cloth. I only met her a handful of times before the funeral, but Margaret sized her up in about 10 minutes. "Like mother, like daughter," she said. "Lock up the good china." The first time Vanessa came to dinner, she complimented the china, the curtains, the size of the property, then asked Margaret, sweetly, what the house was worth. Margaret laughed it off at the table. Doing dishes that night, she didn't laugh. "That girl isn't falling in love with our son," she said. "She's doing an appraisal." I told her she was being harsh. Margaret just went quiet, the kind of quiet that meant she'd already decided, and knew there was no point arguing yet. David and Vanessa married 2 years later. I walked my son into that marriage with a smile on my face and a knot in my stomach that never fully went away. Margaret got sick about 3 years ago. Fatigue, then stomach pain, then pancreatic cancer. Time not a cure, the doctors told us. Somewhere in the middle of it, she changed. Got quieter. Spent long afternoons on her laptop, or on calls with people she wouldn't name, or at doctor appointments that ran 4 hours when the appointment itself took 40 minutes. When I asked, she just patted my hand. "I'm taking care of things, Walter. Let me take care of things." I assumed she meant funeral arrangements. 6 weeks before she passed, drifting on pain medication, she grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave a mark. "Don't trust the smile, Walter," she whispered. "Watch for the smile. When you see it, you'll know I was right." I thought it was the medicine talking. I kissed her forehead and told her to rest. She died 3 weeks later, early morning, with David, Emily, and me in the room. Vanessa wasn't there. She'd left the night before, saying she needed to be strong for David and couldn't watch. Grief makes you forgive a lot of small things you'd normally notice. I wouldn't forgive it for long. If you've ever had a feeling about someone in your own family, the kind you talked yourself out of because it felt unkind to even think it, tell me in the comments. I want to know I wasn't the only one. The funeral was 11 days later, hundreds of people, employees going back 30 years, neighbors, faces I barely remembered who lit up talking about something kind Margaret had done for them decades ago. Vanessa cried beautifully. I'll be fair. Maybe some of it was real. But between the tears, she spent a good while talking quietly with my brother-in-law, a real estate appraiser. 4 days after the funeral, our attorney Harrison Pike called the family together to go over the will. Just me, David, Vanessa, Emily, Tom. He started with the basics, the house, the savings, a few bequests to Margaret's favorite charities. Then the business. Coleman Building Supply remains under Walter's full ownership and control, Harrison said. Margaret's shares transfer entirely to Walter. Vanessa's jaw tightened for half a second, like the number in her head didn't match the number she was hearing. Then Harrison added, "There's also a secondary document, sealed at Margaret's request until a later date. I can't discuss its contents today." That's when Vanessa smiled. Small, quick, gone almost as soon as it appeared. I didn't say anything. I just started watching her properly. The weeks after were strange. The house too big, too silent. My body still waking at 5 out of 40 years of habit. David came around more, which I appreciated. Then Vanessa started coming too, and her visits had a shape to them. "Dad, have you thought about whether this house is too much for you now? Dad, are you sleeping okay? You seem tired, always dressed up a little differently, always landing on the same idea. That I might be slipping." I wasn't slipping. I still run payroll math in my head faster than the kids in the office do it on a calculator. But within a few weeks she'd started building a quiet narrative, one conversation at a time, and I started writing it down. A small notebook, the old-fashioned kind, because I didn't trust anything digital in this house anymore. By the end of the first month, that notebook wasn't thin. About a month in, I went looking for old tax documents in Margaret's home office and found her files out of order. Not messy, rearranged, in a way she never would have left them. When I asked Vanessa about it, she smiled that same polished smile. "I tidied up a little for you, Dad. I figured I'd help." She figured she'd help herself, I thought, though I didn't say it yet. That night I called Carol Whitfield, Margaret's closest friend since nursing school. I asked if Margaret had mentioned anything to her in the last year. Documents, plans, worries about the family. A long pause. "Walter," Carol said carefully, "I think you need to come by. There's something Margaret asked me to give you. But not yet. Not until you notice something on your own first." My hands went cold holding that phone. "Carol," I said, "I think I just noticed it." Carol's kitchen smelled like cinnamon candles, same as always. She came back with a small fireproof lockbox, given to her 8 months before Margaret passed, with strict instructions not to hand it over unless I came asking, confused about something specific in the family. Inside, a sealed envelope in Margaret's handwriting, and a flash drive taped to a folded note. "Walter, if you're reading this, you noticed something was wrong. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive. You'd have wanted to confront it immediately, and I needed time to be sure first. About a year before I got sick, I found small, strange transfers in the business accounts, vendor payments to companies that didn't seem to exist. I mentioned it to David once, gently. He brushed it off. Vanessa had been modernizing the books, since she used to work in finance. I hired someone, Walter, a forensic accountant named Renata Ibarra, completely outside the business, paid privately from my own savings, the account you never check because you trust me with it completely. Her number is on the paper with the drive. Everything she found is on it, through 3 months before I died. I couldn't finish. I'm asking you to finish it for me. There's a second sealed document with Harrison. It only activates if certain conditions are met within 6 months of my death. Conditions about honesty, about this family, about how they treat you once I'm not here to stand between you and them. I know you'll want to confront her the second you finish reading this. Please don't. Watch. Gather everything. Let her think she's winning. People like her get careless when they think they've already won. I love you more than I ever learned how to say out loud. Finish this for me. Margaret. There was an audio file too for Walter if you need to hear my voice. I waited until I was home, in our quiet bedroom, before I pressed play. Her voice came through tired but steady. "Hi, sweetheart. If you're hearing this, you found Carol and you're probably furious and scared, and a little proud of me too, knowing you. Use the same man who built that business out of nothing, patient, careful, never rushed into a bad decision. Don't let her make you angry. Let her make herself careless. And Walter, when this is over, don't let it make you bitter. We had a good life. Don't let the worst person in this family take the best parts of you along with the money she tried to take. I love you. I'll see you again someday. Finish it for me first." I sat at the edge of our bed and played it 4 more times before I slept. I called Renata the next morning. She remembered Margaret right away. "I've been wondering if anyone would ever call," she said. "Your wife was sharp, Mr. Coleman. She caught things most people would have missed." 2 days later, in her small downtown office, she walked me through it. Over 18 months, roughly $240,000 had moved out of Coleman Building Supply through payments to a consulting company called Brightline Solutions Group, supposedly hired to modernize accounting systems. Brightline had no employees, no office, no record of any actual work. The only name on its registration was Diane Foster, Vanessa's mother, the same Diane Margaret had clocked over good china years earlier. "There's more," Renata said gently, sliding a page across the table. "Your wife flagged a change to the family trust 10 months ago, shifting decision-making authority over certain accounts in the event of your incapacity. It's signed by you. I had never signed it. A document examiner confirmed it later. A good forgery, but not a perfect one. My wife had found all of this while she was dying, while the rest of us thought she was just resting. I thought about her words in that hospital bed. Don't trust the smile. Watch for the smile. She hadn't been confused at all. I won't pretend the next weeks weren't an act. Sitting across from Vanessa at dinner, asking about her week, pretending I didn't know about the forged signature and the $250,000. I hired a second attorney, Patricia Salinas, who specialized in elder fraud, entirely separate from Harrison. She found something Margaret had also already flagged. Years earlier, Vanessa had been quietly let go from a finance job after an internal audit caught irregularities in client accounts. Never public, never criminal, just a resignation everyone agreed to keep quiet. 5 weeks after the funeral, David came by alone. We sat on the back porch, Margaret's crossword porch, and after a while of talking about nothing, he said the thing that told me how deep this had already gone. "Vanessa thinks we should talk to a lawyer about protections. For you. Power of attorney, maybe a guardianship, just on paper, just in case." He paused. "She mentioned you seemed confused about a delivery schedule last week." I hadn't been confused about any delivery schedule. I told him I'd think about it. Inside, I thought, let her think she's winning. Patricia brought in a retired cop investigator, Frank Dietz, to watch Vanessa's movements. 2 weeks later, he called with photographs. Vanessa, twice on afternoons she'd claimed were yoga class, walking into the office of an attorney who specialized almost exclusively in elder guardianship filings. "She's building a paper trail," Patricia said, "so that when she files, it looks like she did everything by the book." 3 weeks after that, at a Sunday dinner meant to mark what would have been Margaret's birthday, Vanessa stood up mid-dessert and tapped her wine glass. "We've all been worried about Dad," she said, voice warm and concerned in a way that made my skin crawl. "David and I consulted a specialist. Given some of the memory issues we've observed, we think, for Dad's protection and the business's, we should move forward with a guardianship arrangement. We've already had paperwork drawn up." She slid a folder toward David, then a letter across the table. "We even have a note from Dr. Albright's office." Emily's face went from confusion to alarm. "Vanessa, what are you talking about? Dad's fine. I talk to him every day." "I know it's hard to see in someone you love," Vanessa said gently. "People closest to him often don't notice the changes." I let her finish every word, in front of every witness I could possibly need. Then I picked up the letter. Right letterhead, right format, signed by a name I didn't recognize, from a clinic 2 counties over I'd never set foot in. "Vanessa," I said, calm as I could manage, "I've never been to this clinic. Where did you get this?" That smile flickered across her face again. Smaller this time, nervous, but unmistakably the same one from Harrison's office. We just wanted to be thorough, Dad." "I'm sure," I said, "and I think it's time everyone heard the rest of it. If you've gotten this far and you're already mad on Walter's behalf, wait. It gets worse before it gets better. Stick around." Emily called before I'd finished my coffee the next morning. "Something is wrong with that letter, Dad. I'm not waiting around to find out the hard way." I didn't tell her everything yet. Patricia wanted the circle small, but I told her enough. She became the one person I could say almost anything to, quietly watching David without making it obvious, the same instinct her mother used to have. 2 weeks later, Frank confirmed it through county filings. Vanessa had already filed a formal guardianship petition, requesting an emergency hearing, citing the same fake letter. She hadn't been planning. She'd already pulled the trigger. Days after that, a young woman from our accounting department, Priya, called Patricia's office, nervous. She'd been entering the Brightline invoices over a year earlier, told by Vanessa it was approved directly by Margaret. She'd kept the emails. One sent 8 months earlier while Margaret was still in chemo read. Just process these the same as before. Walter doesn't look at this stuff closely and David trusts me completely. Once things settle down with his mom, it'll be easy to move faster. She'd been planning to move faster while my wife was still fighting to live. When Patricia read me that line over the phone, I had to sit down. I drove to the cemetery the morning of the meeting and sat by Margaret's headstone for almost an hour. I'm finishing it, I told her. Just like you asked. Everyone arrived around the same time. David and Vanessa, tense and composed. Emily and Tom. Diane Foster, dressed sharp, wearing her daughter's same practice smile. Harrison at the head of the table with a folder twice as thick as the first one. Patricia sat beside me. Renata sat across, ready if needed. Near the door, quietly, sat Detective Marcus Webb. Patricia had brought him in once the numbers crossed into criminal territory. Vanessa saw him first. Something tightened behind her eyes. I didn't have a speech ready anymore. I just talked plain the way Margaret and I used to talk at our own kitchen table. For months ago, at the first reading of your mother's will, Vanessa smiled when Harrison mentioned a sealed document. Your mother taught me to notice things like that. Turns out she'd noticed a lot more than I had. I slid the first folder toward David. His face had already started to go pale before I said another word. Like some part of him already knew. Renata laid out the Brightline numbers in 2 sentences, not 10. Diane's composed expression cracked. This is a misunderstanding, she started. Brightline did consulting. No employees, no office, no deliverables anywhere, Renata said. I asked 3 times. Patricia set down the forgery report. My signature next to the fake one, side by side. Vanessa didn't look at it. She looked at the table. Then the medical letter. Then Dr. Albright's actual statement, denying it ever existed. Then the guardianship petition itself, time-stamped, 6 days old. Vanessa's signature at the bottom. This wasn't a plan being discussed, Patricia said quietly. This was filed. You were 3 days from a judge deciding whether Walter still gets to run his own life. Vanessa's hands started shaking. I can explain the timing. Please do, Harrison said. She didn't. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Last, Patricia read Priya's email aloud. Just the one line that mattered. Once things settle down with his mom, it'll be easy to move faster. Nobody breathed for a long moment. Emily had a hand over her mouth. Tom's arm was around her shoulders. David hadn't said a word since I slid the first folder toward him. Then he turned to his wife. Vanessa, tell me this isn't true. Her composure finally broke. David, I did this for us. For our future. Your dad has everything. And we have nothing close. And my mother was dying, David said, voice shaking. And you were planning to move faster once she was gone. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like watching a building collapse that I'd warned everyone about for years. Detective Webb identified himself and asked Vanessa and Diane to come in voluntarily. Attorneys present if they chose. Diane cried the way people cry when they've been caught, not when they're sorry. Vanessa just sat there, white-faced. Harrison finally opened the sealed addendum. Margaret had built in a clause. Any beneficiary found to have committed fraud or attempted financial exploitation against me within a set window after her death would be permanently excluded from inheritance, with full discretion over the business staying with me indefinitely. She'd built a trap with a door that only opened if Vanessa walked through it herself. She had smiling the whole way. The guardianship hearing was canceled that week. The judge referred everything to the district attorney instead. Diane took a plea, restitution, probation. Vanessa's case was worse, given the scale and the forgery. She served real time with a long restitution order on top of it. I went to the sentencing, though Patricia said I didn't have to. When Vanessa turned around once, I didn't see the smile from Harrison's office anymore. I just saw someone out of room to keep performing. I didn't feel satisfaction. Mostly I felt tired and ready for it to be over. David filed for divorce 3 weeks later. It took him time, quiet nights on the back porch, working through what it meant to have believed in someone who'd been working against his own father the whole time. But he never once defended what she'd done. "I should have noticed," he told me one night. "Mom noticed. You noticed. I didn't want to." "You loved her," I said. "That's not a flaw, son. Your mother just had 30 more years of practice reading people than you did." Emily and Tom started coming around every Sunday. The house started feeling like a home again instead of just the place I used to live with my wife. 8 months after that meeting, I brought David back into the business as a full partner. Not because he'd earned it through the mess, but because of what he showed me every day after. Emily joined too, rebuilding our accounting systems so nothing like Brightline could slip through again. We renamed one of the newer locations the Margaret Coleman Building. The plaque out front just says, "Built on honesty. Protected by patience." Emily had her second child that spring, a girl named Margaret. I hold her every Sunday on the same porch where my wife used to do her crosswords, and I tell her, even though she's too small to understand a word of it, about the grandmother who outsmarted a thief from a hospital bed without ever raising her voice. I think about that smile a lot. The one Vanessa gave 4 days after I buried my wife, when she thought she'd already won something nobody else in the room even knew was being played for. She was wrong about what kind of man I was. My wife made sure of that, even from beyond the grave. In the end, the only person in that room who actually had something to smile about was the one Vanessa never saw coming at all. My wife. If this one got you, if you've ever underestimated someone who was quietly 3 steps ahead the whole time, let me know in the comments. I read every one.